Good evening. Budget 2013 has now been approved, and the National Assembly can proceed to other issues and challenges facing Guyana. I thought it might be a good time for an epilogue on the Budget 2013, and who better to do that than commentator Raymond Gaskin. Mr. Gaskin, welcome to Plain Talk. Now, I invited you to speak specifically on the budget, but would you mind if I raise a couple other topics with you?
No. I'd be happy to talk about other things.
Let's talk about the radio licenses. Now, you know it's sub judice. It's a matter involving the court, but there's no real rules that we can't discuss it.
No. There's no rule at all that you can't discuss a matter that is before the court. On the 146 of the Constitution, we have the right to speak on any matter
once you don't bring
the court into disrepute.
That's correct.
We can talk about it.
Tell me about it.
Talk only about it.
No, just talk briefly on the radio licenses.
It's totally lawless. It's totally lawless. What's going on here with radio licenses?
But here it is.
If you want a brief answer.
No, but here it is. It was given, a decision was made by then President Barra Jagdeo on the powers he had as Minister of Information. What is lawless about it then? And what can be done about it?
Well, what is lawless and what can be done about it? The court is going to rule on that, on the legality of it. When I talk lawless and wicked, I'm talking colloquially. I'm not talking as a legal expert. The judges will rule on that, on the legality of the thing. It is lawless and wicked, as far as I'm concerned. What is wrong with it, essentially, is that it's done on the eve of his demitting office. It's done in secret. It is unfair to many who have applied for long years now and didn't get it. And when we look at the list of those who actually got it, we see the friends of the president and the PPP in there, the New Guyana Company, Ramroop Enterprises, and a company controlled by some relatives of Robert Passau, the minister. That's what's wrong about this whole thing. And companies that have been involved in the media business for a long time, but I hold no brief for them, they have been totally shut out of this process, the Starbucks News, the Kaicho News, CN Charm, and so on, but they have people who can represent them.
Attorney General Anil Nandalal, a couple nights ago, speaking at the a reception by the U.S. ambassador, said, look, let us not confuse this process. The fact that some people did not get doesn't mean that those who did get radio licenses got them improperly. Would you like to comment on the...
That is what he said. It sounds like a reasonable argument, but the judges will rule on that, about those who got. The judges will rule on that. As a general rule, the mere fact that, say, Sharma didn't get doesn't mean necessarily that those who got it wrongfully, but in this particular case, it is clear to me that the entire process was flawed and wrong. Nandalal, in that same speech, talked about the methodology could have been better. He himself admitted there are some problems there. And, but he went on to speak about what struck me in 1972. He said the PVP was denied newsprint. Now, could you imagine this guy, 41 years later, telling us about this newsprint problem? All of it unrelated. All of it unrelated.
And he's one of the younger breed of politicians.
I'm not sure he was born at the time. I remember the story about newsprint, but I don't think he was born at the time. But it's all irrelevant that in those days you had problems with newsprint.
Another issue, before we, and I'll have about 5 issues. These bills that appear to have fallen through the cracks at the office of the president. First, it was again at Mr. Nandalal's office.
Yeah, he still got it there. And the president said, I haven't seen them yet, so I can't comment on that.
But is that constitutional, Mr. Gaskin?
The president is being cynical and facetious and is not behaving presidential. The Constitution is clear on what has to happen to these bills when they're passed by the National Assembly, and his saying that he didn't see them and all of that, he can't come in, is what the British would call poppycock in England, and it's all nonsense. And he should deal with it properly in the Constitution. What the president is to do with a bill when it's passed by the National Assembly. Well, if Nandalal wants to keep the bill and not send it to the president, the Constitution still obliges the President on what is to happen when a bill is not signed within a certain number of days. But I was very disturbed at the cavalier manner in which the President dealt with this matter at this press conference. He ought to be more serious on matters of this.
How would you deal with it, with an issue like that? How would you suggest that it be dealt with? We're a president. This is a violation of the Constitution.
The Constitution, I think there are a couple of ways to deal with it. You deal with it politically, you deal with it in the National Assembly, you deal with it maybe legally through the court system. You can deal with it through active protests. There are different ways of dealing with it. Chetty used to call for a multifaceted struggle on all fronts in these old days. Chetty Jagger used to talk about struggling on all fronts.
Those were the days you used to advise him.
I heard him speak about struggling on all fronts. And I think the time must come to be able to struggle on all fronts. I see Messrs. Glenn Lal and Dr. Noel Blackman in America. They're taking their case to a member of Congress. It is necessary to struggle on all fronts: legal, political, street, the National Assembly, the media, and so on. This is what struggle is all about.
But okay, you have those. Surely the Speaker...
How to deal with it? The President is coming to the National Assembly for support for some money laundering bill or something, which has become very critical now. I think it's coming up. You're familiar with some?
Yes, I am.
It needs the support of the parliamentary opposition to get passed. And it is my considered opinion that they should settle some of these outstanding matters in exchange for their support to pass the bill. That's how you can do it. You don't want to deal with the matters we have raised. Well, we can deal with the matters you bring to me. It's very simple. What's so difficult about that?
Now, it's the Speaker who sends the bill as passed to the President. Shouldn't the Speaker and should the National Assembly accept some responsibility for this?
No, but what you have here is a collision of tradition. You have an odd situation where the Senior Parliamentary Council works out of the chambers of the Attorney General. And you have the Senior Parliamentary Council working out of the chambers of the Attorney General, and a thing is stuck there, and there's some tradition we're told that it goes there.
No, but we have a constitution now. Forget your constitution.
There's a collision between the constitutional requirements and what appears to be a tradition in
which prevails?
Well, the Constitution prevails, obviously.
So I'm asking you...
The Attorney General is using the tradition.
No, but you just now said this has nothing to do with the Attorney General. This has to do with the President.
It has nothing to do with him. But there is a certain tradition here that they want to uphold in order to stall the delivery of the bill to the President for signature. He's not going to sign it anyhow. He's not going to sign it. I think one of it dealt with the benefits of the former President.
and himself as well.
Yeah, himself too. He's not going to sign it, we know that.
Because he will become a former president at some point.
Yeah, he will become, yeah. We hope so.
These unsolved crimes and their investigations, you know, these massive lumber, and we know the 10 million United States...
And the gold in Curacao and all of that, a lot of that going on, a lot of that.
And we heard a team went to Curacao. How do these things just fall off the radar?
And they didn't even get to interview the crew of the ship and all of that. Everybody here knows whose ship it is, you know, and they know whose goal it is too, in case you don't know. But everybody else in the street who deal with gold know whose goal.
Careful where you're pointing.
Where I'm pointing, I think I'm pointing now, east or west. But it comes to the question of the police force, the competence of the police force, and all of us know that the police force is in need of serious reform. It hasn't been done. We know there was a Chang report and the discipline services, the Simmons report. Nothing really has been done over the years, and that's the problem here. We have an on-demand force, underpaid, on-demand, under-trained, under-skilled, and a lot needs to be done if we're to get these problems solved. The present police force, as commanded now and as staffed and managed, cannot deal with all these problems. They fail all the time.
Do you hold the minister in any way responsible for this? You know, we hear so much about Minister Rohi.
The minister is the political minister in the cabinet responsible for the security sector, and the Police Act. the Police Act gives him what it says.
General power.
He's responsible for the general direction of the
Yeah.
force, and he has the power to give orders of a general nature, something like that, to the force. He does have a responsibility to bring to the cabinet the deficiencies, if any, because they've been investigated already by Simmons and the Chan Commission, and to ensure that they're complied with. That's his responsibility, I think. And to get the money, the funding to get these things done, but they haven't done it.
You have taken a liking for quoting England. You started today.
Yeah.
How would a situation like this, a minister, a commissioner of
Well,
police...
England, he can't be minister anymore. You mean Rohi and all of them? I don't know if any of them would remain as minister in England. In England, very strict, you know. One minister was leaving Downing Street the other day on a bicycle, and he told some policeman some rudeness, and he had to leave. Yeah, he had to give up his position. In England, you don't do things like that. Ministers are not allowed to give rudeness to policemen on duty outside number 10. And he had to leave. It's simple as that. The rules are very strict over there. We don't expect strict rules like that. But many of these ministers we have here would not be able to survive it in a strict system of cabinet responsibility and accountability to the parliament. They won't be able.
A matter that is close to you. Last year, you actually did some work at the location City Hall. What's going on there?
What's going on there? Well, I have an interest in what goes on at City Hall because I spent a couple of weeks there looking into the question of whether they had complied with recommendations of the borough's report. Boroughs had looked into the management of City Hall, and he had made 45 recommendations on how to improve the work of City Hall, including systems to be put in place and so on. And he'd asked me to go and look and see how much of it was implemented. And I reported to him that none of it was. None of it was. After 4 or 5 years, none of it, not one of it. So that place is bad news. And while I was there, I was looking into a couple of other things, and I discovered couple of irregularities, and I made a report and so on. I think there were changes there at City Hall at the management level. But the place continues to be a total disgrace. The City Council, what is called the City Council there, it's a total disgrace. They don't do the work that they're supposed to be doing. But most of all, they're an entirely illegal bunch, illegal group of people, starting with the mayor, Hamilton Green, Chase Green, all of them, they're illegal. They have no legal position to be there and call themselves a council because they were elected, as far as I can recall, in 1994. We're now 19 years later, and there's no rule in this country, no constitution that says any mayor and council elected 19 years ago could still be in office today and be legal. There's no such thing.
But now, isn't it that they are legitimized by the National Assembly, which every year votes to defer local government elections and to allow them to stay in place?
The National Assembly has no such authority to legitimize nothing, and it doesn't legitimize nothing. It's lawless, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional. The Constitution of this country is supreme, and the National Assembly cannot do anything that violates the Constitution of the Republic, 1980 as amended. And the Constitution requires local government elections to be held periodically at certain fixed intervals, and it hasn't been done. And the National Assembly cannot violate the Constitution for 19 years, or how much ever, since 97, I think it's 16 years. It's entirely lawless. The President, Mayor, and City Council have no business sitting there at City Council around what they call the famous horseshoe table. They have no authority, no legal authority to be sitting there. It's as clear as that. None. There's no law in this country that allows for that. That after 19 years, you could still be a councillor. Every part of the world, you can do that. Not even in North Korea. What's the matter with these people?
Let's turn to the budget.
Yeah, the budget, the famous budget.
The 2013 budget. What progress have we made between last year, when we heard the budget cuts, and what we have made this year, when the opposition said we will get rid of contract employees, we will cut with a big scissors? What progress have we in fact made?
Well, It is true. If you look at the 2012, it is my understanding that those monies cut were restored.
The expenditure, you're saying?
Yeah, the monies cut in 2012 were restored by the Minister of Finance to those agencies.
Except,
NCN, GINA, and all of that.
Yes, I think Ms. Nanalal confirmed that again yesterday.
Yeah.
Was that legal in his view?
Well,
that
no,
restoration?
Of course it's illegal because he's taken, the National Assembly did not approve it. And I think he claims to have taken money from the contingencies fund. All of it is lawless. All of it is lawless. So to continue with this cutting as a tactical position, we don't know what will happen to these cuts that have recently been made. I believe if the Attorney General cannot get his way in the court system to have them restored by some order of some judge, then the minister will probably do the same thing he did last year, because he did it and nobody was able to undo it, what he did. So that's the question of the cutting. But the cutting is a tactical position. I don't know.
You're distinguishing between tactical and strategic?
Yeah, but it's just a cutting exercise. These budget debates have been dominated by the cutting and nothing else. We haven't even been able to get into the budget, really. And the merits and demerits of spend outside of these famous cuts. Everything has been, all the discussion has been focused on the cuts, but we haven't really been able to look at the budget. This whole question of cuts has dominated the whole debate, really, when you think about it.
Yes.
And that's unfortunate, because we didn't get to look at the real.
So you're saying that the cuts are tactical and probably counterproductive, because they're going to be restored. Mr. Gaskin, where do you think they went wrong?
Well, I think the government, from the government side, they went wrong because they failed to consult. The basic problem with this budget and the cuts and all this thing has to do with the government's failure to consult. The government does not want to consult with the opposition now. They feel quite comfortable consulting with the Private Sector Commission, Webster, Jerry Gavaya, Ramesh Duku, and their friends.
But they're surely a key segment of the population. Yeah, but you can't dismiss them.
No, I'm not dismissing them. But they're behaving recently as great political supporters of the government in all their pronouncements. The private sector, Jerry Gavaya and Ramesh Duku and all these people earning, they don't come with a neutral, professional, private sector position. They come with a political position supporting the government. They're all supporters of the government. Yeah. And when the government seeks to consult with Labour, they pick Carvel Duncan from Fitug and Sipon Narain from Gau and so on.
Didn't they meet with Mr. Lincoln Lewis of the TUC
on
this
occasion?
Occasion?
I understand that meeting was arranged by some other people who were able to secure it, and nothing came out of that. Nothing came out of that. But we see on the TV, every night since the budget, the same group of people, Clinton Williams, Jerry Gavaya, Ramesh Duku, and Clinton Erlin, and Carvel Duncan, and so on. Every night, they're propagandists. They become propagandists now for the government, and they're losing their credibility as representatives of the private sector and Labour. The way they're behaving.
Where did the other segments of the population go wrong?
Well, as I told you, the government had refused to consult with them all the time, and they did nothing to get it done. And eventually, on the eve of the thing, they were able to arrange a meeting with the president, and they went to see him, and they laid out for him 11, what I would call, recommendations. They call them recommendations of the joint opposition parties. I was able to secure a copy of this famous letter addressed to President Ramatar.
And this is by the opposition parties?
Yeah, by the opposition parties, signed 12th April, signed by David Granger and Prakash Ramjatan. And I would like to share with you, what is it they're telling the president on the eve of the budget? What are their recommendations?
What's wrong with them writing the president? Well, is it the timing?
And
is
they
it the
mess with him. Well, it's late like hell, because the budget is already done, for one. And secondly, it's interesting to see what is it they actually wrote him, what they're recommending to him. You're interested to know what is it they wrote him at the last minute?
I think the public would like to know.
Well, maybe you already know. In this famous 11-point thing, they call it matters to be discussed, and they call it, they follow specific recommendations of the APNU and AFC. And the first thing that strikes me about this letter to the president is what APNU and AFC consider to be the number one priority in this country. And in this letter to the president, they said the number one priority is that's what they recommended. And a wage increase.
Are you assuming that because they itemize
Yeah, I assume that, yes.
that the number one issue?
That's why they list it as number one. I'm assuming that. The first order of business for them is a 10% increase for sugar workers and public servants. The first item. With effect from June 1. 10%.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
Well, there are a couple of things wrong with that. First of all, the public servants and the sugar workers, they call them, sugar workers, are covered by collective bargaining with the GAU and the Public Service Union mainly, respectively. And the employer does bargain with the union, the GAU union, in respect of those workers covered by the collective. But the government as employer refuses to conduct serious collective bargaining with the union representing its employees. And therefore to go and say, we're asking for 10% for them and 10%, it's ridiculous. What they need to do is to demand that the government resume collective bargaining with the public service union and for public servants. That's what you need to demand. Not to put a 10% number, 7% or 15% or what. They're totally out of order here. They're totally out of order.
That's the opposition you're saying?
Yes, in this letter here, they're asking for 10% for sugar workers and 10% for public servants. Where do they get this idea from? Where do they get this number from? It's entirely ridiculous and it's out of order. Because the GAU, the Gaisuko negotiates with the GAU all the time, but the government refuses to negotiate with the public service union, the public service union and other unions. So the demand ought to have been not 10% or whatever percent number, to demand that the employer as government resume collective bargaining with the people there, the union. That's what they should have done. But I don't see why this is the number one priority in this thing.
Well, let's hear their other issues.
Next. Now the second thing that these two party leaders believe is the most important thing in this country is to rescind the frequencies and license for the spectrum issued in 2011. They think that the number two most important.
Well, you indicated it was important.
It is important. I don't know if the number two. And now that they've all gone to the courts there to seek judicial remedy, I don't know if this is a pre-budget thing. If this demand is a demand that has to do with the budget and the finances of this country, or if it's a demand to show leverage, that if you don't do this, we mightn't cut. I don't know what it is here, but this is one of the recommendations to rescind.
So it's the radio licenses?
Yeah.
And it's what was it specifically?
Rescind the frequencies and licenses for the spectrum issued in 2011. This is the Jagdeo thing, what he did before leaving office. Number two item. Number three item they consider the most important, in my opinion, is for the government to give the license to operate television station Region 10. You know, that matter has been dragging on for some time now. So they have that as...
And that was part of an agreement the government had made last year,
following
the death of three Londoners.
The government had made an agreement, I think, to facilitate a license for the region,
yes,
the region station. It hasn't happened yet. I understand that since that facilitation was promised, the ownership of that thing has changed somewhat. And it's some private people are now involved in that same Region 10 thing. And they may be actually majority shareholders in the Region 10. I don't know if that is what is interfering with it.
So you're suggesting that what was intended to be the recipient might no longer
be, yeah, because no longer Region 10 thing. It's a private sector thing. Some private people gone up there to try to hijack that whole station, whatever it is. So that may be the reason why that hasn't happened yet.
I would like to stop you now, Mr. Gaskin, so that we can take an ad break. But you will tell me about these other seven.
I have, I think, eight more.
Welcome back to Plain Talk, the epilogue to Budget 2013 with Mr. Raymond Gaskin. Mr. Gaskin, you were discussing
yes.
The correspondence from the leaders of the opposition
to the president.
To the president prior to the budget.
In which he set out a couple items, 11 items here.
Yeah, and you mentioned three so far.
Which they call recommendations. Well, the first one had to do with wages for sugar workers and public servants. The second one had to do with rescinding of frequencies. The third one had to do with the Region 10 station. And the fourth one now, they're recommending to the president to provide a status report on the use to which the transfers approved by the Assembly for GAISUCO and GPL have been put, as well as commissions of inquiry into these two agencies. Well, first of all, the agency to do an inquiry into the GPL is the Public Utilities Commission, and I can tell you I've written the chairman to request such a commission.
You in your private capacity?
I've written the chairman to request public hearings on the operations of the GPL, particularly since the spokesman for the GPL, including the Prime Minister, have said that these cuts will affect delivery, service, and tariffs and all kinds of things.
Which are matters?
Which, well, not tariffs, quality of service matters come under the purview of the PUC. So I think those matters, I'm hopeful that the PUC will conduct a proper, full, comprehensive public hearing.
When last did the PUC do such a hearing, Mr. Gaskin?
The PUC did a big, comprehensive hearing in 2002, at which I gave evidence, the result of which was that the GPL was ordered to repay its consumers $1.4 billion as a result of that. For the inefficiencies.
And to make some dramatic improvements in efficiencies.
Yes, because of the inefficiencies, the PUC had made the order, I think it's under 25 and 26 of the Act, ordering them to repay the consumers.
What happened to that matter?
I think that matter was withdrawn. It may have been because of the change of ownership of the company or something, but we'll have to look at it. If I get an opportunity, I'll get a chance to calculate one more time the compensation claim, which is what I want to do. How much money the GPL owes the consumers of this country for inefficiency.
So you're saying this so-called commission of inquiry that the opposition was calling for ought to have been a call to the PUC?
Yes, they should know that. They should know that the PUC is the agency to do that. And you don't need to go to the president to get it. You can go to the PUC to request.
That's where they should have gone.
Yes. But
what about GAISUCO?
Well, the problem with them quickly, the problem with GPL and GAISUCO in the National Assembly, they have been getting monies. They got last year, and I think they got this year. They came for big monies. This National Assembly, this Granger and Ramjatan and all them, they've been considering transfers for GAISUCO and GPL without even demanding that these companies submit to the National Assembly updated financial statements.
Which they're required to do in
by
any
law,
case.
which they're required to do by law anyhow. But they're voting billions to them. I think they give GPL billions and billions. Where are the audited, up-to-date financial statements of these companies?
Would you describe the Parliament in granting these things as being irresponsible?
Totally irresponsible and incompetent and useless.
Well, that's
useless. How can you, as members of Parliament, the National Assembly, consider making grants to these national entities of billions of dollars without demanding as a minimum for them to lay before you the financial statement so we can read it and see what's the problem? But besides that, still to continue the management and board of directors of these companies, still keep these people on the boards who registering losses all the time, and the management too, and paying them hundreds of millions of dollars all the time. The top 28 managers at GPL are collecting $275 million a year, about nearly $1 million a month per man average, and keep all these people. What's going on here?
And they don't produce 80% of the electricity.
They don't produce nothing. They don't produce nothing. It's Wartsilla people and Dempoco and so doing all that.
Now let's go on to the
at least the members of the National Assembly, in discharging their responsibilities to the voters and the taxpayers in the country, ought to demand that in exchange for any support for these people, if they're going to get any, they should revamp and reconstitute the boards of directors of these companies and the management. And this goes also for the NIS. And if I had anything to do with it, they wouldn't get a single penny. They wouldn't get a single penny from me.
Let's go on, Mr. Gaskin.
So now they're asking the president now on the number 6. And 5, to get a new tax reform committee. There's a tax reform committee set up since the president was elected, headed by, I think, Mr. Clifford Reese and Mr. Ronald Ali and an ex-accountant. They never met. I think Solomon?
He's an economist.
Yeah, and they never met. So now they're asking to reconstitute this committee. But this is the part in this letter here now, and to include members approved by all the political parties to do this work.
You wrote.
You too. Where you're going to get people to be approved by all the parties, that each party has a veto on professionals to serve on a tax reform committee. What nonsense is this? The same problem we had with the veto of the Chief Justice and the Chancellor when they were amending the Constitution, that one party must have a veto power on the appointment. But now, for this tax reform committee, they said to include members approved by all parties. Where Ramjatan and Granger get this idea from that all these parties have to agree to have somebody sit on the tax reform committee in this country to look at tax reform. Where they get this idea from? I thought these fellas went to university. I'm not sure now. Now, number 6. They want the president to properly and to fully constitute the Integrity Commission, the Human Rights Commission, other commissions, the Police Commission, the Public Commission, the Teaching Commission. You get all these commissions in this thing.
You don't have a problem with that?
I have a big problem with this, yes. I always have problems with these things. And the ombudsman and all that. These people here, Granger and Ramjatan, they left out the Procurement Commission. They talk about this Procurement Commission all the time. And this is the one they left out. Let me see, did I read right? Let me see, man. Did I read right? The Human Rights Commission, the Police and Public Commission, the Teaching Commission, the Public Service Tribunal, the Elections Commission, the Supreme Court, the Chambers of the DPP, the Audit Office, the Ombudsman. Where is the Procurement Commission that we complain about all the time? Where is the Local Government Commission we complain about all the time? Could you imagine that these two big men write this letter and leave out the most important things? But that's what it is. It's amazing, eh? It's amazing. But even...
Must have been an oversight.
Oh, yes, but you can apologize for them. I think it's entirely ridiculous. And it's incompetent. That's what it is. So that's enough for these commissions. I'll tell you something about these commissions, quickly. Will you ask the president to do this commission?
We also have a provision, if I may, please. The Constitutional Reform Commission, no, following the St. Lucia Court.
Constitutional Reform Commission, we have the Law Reform Commission requirements by statute here. We have to have a standing law reform. We have none of these things in this place. And these commissions, when you really think about it, they're going to put all the friends in this commission, Jerry Gavai and Carla Duncan and all these people, the Orlin and all these, they go to these commissions all the time. They're on all these Ramesh Dukun, so the same kind of people. And you know, when you're going to know truly the independence or lack of it is these people, I think Edgell is the great example. I always thought Edgell, I used to think, Edgell was independent.
When he was in with the ERC.
The ERC man. This guy is in the cabinet. This guy was civic all the time, I think. Civic all the time, masquerading with a big cross around his neck as a religious leader who's independent and neutral. Not true. So
he spoke on behalf of Jesus Christ, however.
Oh, yes.
Remember when he said Jesus Christ would vote for him?
PPP. Jesus Christ has a way of striking them down for blasphemy. It's in the scripture. Number 7. They say that, oh, now Mr. Ramjatan and Granger, Messrs, have come to the question of NISIL. In number 7, they say that to ensure by June 1. Now this letter is in April. That the agencies, extra budgetary agencies, including NISIL, they must report to the Assembly on their current finances and transfer the excess resources to the Consolidated Fund.
What problem you have with that?
This is the number 1 item. This is the number 1 problem with this budget in this country. And they have it listed as number 7 item after Region 10 and all kind of nonsense. That the funds of this country are not put into the national budget. This is the problem here. That the minister presenting the national budget to the National Assembly breaks the law. He violates the Constitution in 216, which is clear that all monies payable to Guyana, other than funds, whereby statute they can keep some of those funds to cover their
expenses,
in turn, must be paid into the consolidated fund. The law is clear, it's pellucid, to use Barnum's word. And here you have it now. They know it's not being done. The NISL is the big problem there, which is a separate budget all the time. NISL is like a separate government all the time, and now they have it as number 7 to do it. What is the number 1 problem in this country? That's why this budget and the budget process is illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's entirely lawless from the outset.
It has to start with 216.
Yes.
A budget must start.
And therefore, you know, you're a lawyer, you're a trained lawyer in the English system. There's something the lawyers talk about, an objection in limine. They should have raised this objection in limine from the very outset, that this thing is lawless, it's unlawful, unconstitutional. It does not include the monies payable to Guyana. And therefore, they should have stopped actually saying dead in its tracks. And if I were asked Trotman to rule on this, can the minister bring to the National Assembly a budget, an appropriation bill that is palpably unlawful? I think we need to get this matter resolved one way or another. We cannot continue like this all the time.
But Mr. Ramjatan is an attorney at law of many, many years standing.
Oh, yeah.
He knows the Constitution, he knows the law. He must have some reason for
putting this number 7 and not raising the point in limine. I guess if he was before the judge, he might raise the limine. Before the speaker, he mightn't do it. It's ridiculous. This is the main problem with this budget. If I were to comment on it, it is unlawful. Because it breaches the Constitution, that's why. And unless and until the budget of this country brings in all the revenues into the consolidated fund, we won't be able to deal with expenses, transfers, tax reform, subsidies, or nothing. Because the monies are not reflected there. They have the monies in some other place. And then they come here now for money. They come here money for $1 billion for some hospital. They come here for 11 billion for the GPL. They come here for billions for Gaisuko. And they take the money from the sale of the GT&T shares and keep it over there in Kingston, wherever they keep it. It's lawless. In any proper country, these people will be prosecuted. This is fraud. This is clear fraud.
Central housing and planning must fall under that same. You know about a lot of land being sold.
Oh, yeah, I know a lot about land. I never got any. But I know they have a lot.
No, we're not talking personally now. What you got?
They're selling a lot. They got a lot of money. The central housing got slush funds, the GGMC, the GFC, and all that. They're building some private houses, scheme at the back of Eccles down at the back there. I understand the cabinet person responsible for housing is personally and deeply responsible in the execution of that project down at the back of Eccles, right down at the back. So all this, the problem with NISL, until and unless you deal with this problem of the revenues that are not accounted for, you're an accountant, into the accounting system, you ain't getting no place. You ain't getting no place.
You start with the revenues available.
You have to start with that. And therefore NISL is the number 1 problem in this country and ought to be the number 1 item on this famous letter. This is number 7. Let's move on to quickly number 8. They ask for reform of the NIS. The NIS needs reform, just like Gaisuko and GPL, and they need new management and new board. Launching is sitting there since October 92. Now tell me, in God's name, 21 years.
You're supposed to be an atheist, Raymond.
You don't worry with that. He's sitting there 21 years, and the time has come for him to make way for new leadership of the NIS. It's as clear as day to me. Number 9. Oh, well, I was struck by this. To reduce the toll on the Borby Harbor Bridge to $1,000. This sounds like Nagamutu. I think Nagamutu stuck that in.
That's a private company, is it?
The Borby Bridge is a private.
Does the president have the authority to reduce?
No, the president can't fix rates for the Borby's Bridge. Nagamutu ought to know that. That's what they call these public-private partnerships, where the private people make all the money and the public put up all the money and the private people make profit out of it. $1,000. I don't know where they get the figure from. It's $200 here at the Damar baby. He said,
it's 100 and 200.
200, let it do 1,000, man. Let it do 1,000. It shows a complete lack of understanding of what's going on there, this company and how it's structured. And the government they had to forego I think 700 million in dividends from the place.
That Nissel just give away?
Yeah, that give away. Yeah.
Does Mr. Brassington have that authority?
All his authority comes from Ashley Singh and Luncheon. It's as simple as that. Ashley Singh is chairman of the board, Luncheon sits there, and Ashley Singh is the head of the thing, and that's where he gets his authority from. And I think, in all fairness to Brassington, I have to say, Brassington on his own can't do any of these things. On his own. Oh, number 9. The $1,000 thing to cross the bridge. What should happen there with the bridge? The government should take over that bridge.
Because the government
nationalize the bridge, yes.
Is it not correct to say that the government is financing a lot of it by lots of tax concessions?
Yes. And is also a part shareholder of the bridge. It shouldn't be too difficult to pay off the other shareholders and let them go. And then you'll be able, the government will be able to fix the rates on the bridge. The government should nationalize that bridge. Now, number 10 now. What they want the president to do now? To commence discussions, we don't know with who, to re-establish a professional public service. During which time there will be a freeze on the further recruitment of contract employees. The question of contract employees, although Ramchatan talked a lot about wanting to cut them, and so at the end he shied away from it. He has not been consistent.
And the APNU also said it will reform the whole system of the public service and eliminate this issue.
So what they want the president to do is to start discussions. To start a discussion, not to do anything, just a discussion. I guess the president should say, yes, I can start a discussion. Well, discussion is easy to start, let's talk. To re-establish a professional public service. They just talked earlier about constituting the Public Service Commission properly, and now they want the president to have discussions. So you're going to have this Public Service Commission, which is a requirement of the Constitution, properly reconstituted. And yet now the president can have this recommend discussions with somebody, I don't know, with Jerry Gavaya and Carver Duncan and Ramesh Dupu and them, to how to do it. Because they always seem to be the people who I see on the media advising everything. And I left out Erlin. He's becoming quite civic recently. And the last item now, on the 11th, well, this blew my brains out clearly, partially. To undertake a social and a cultural audit into the work and the professionalism of NCN and GINA. Now, a social and a cultural
what's
audit.
A social and cultural?
Well, you're an auditor, I think, by profession.
We do find out. I don't know what a cultural audit is, Mr. Gaskin.
I have an idea what an audit is.
You were an auditor yourself.
I was the audit clerk. When I left, since '59, I went to work as an audit clerk at Fitzpatrick Graham and Company Chartered Accountants. They were the white people who used to do all the big auditing here. And I was an audit clerk there. And then I started to read about auditing and all this thing. And then I know what audit is. It's a verification process, of course. And there's a famous case in England where it says the auditor must be a watchdog and not a bloodhound. Oh. Well, they want, if you get the watchdog, we don't have watchdogs here, we got lapdog. We don't have watchdog, what they call auditors in this country. We don't have the proper, we don't even have watchdogs, much as bloodhounds. We got a whole set of lapdogs who claim to be auditors. I don't know how you do a cultural audit.
But is that the problem at NCN, seriously?
No, the audit at the NCN problem is corruption. Well, I must tell you, the word corruption doesn't appear in this whole thing.
Corruption and
no, unemployment.
Public Procurement Commission doesn't
appear at all. In this whole document, signed by Granger and Prakash Ramchatan, the word corruption doesn't appear. Corruption is the main problem in this country. After the Nissel problem, the second biggest problem in this country with the finances of this country is corruption. Corruption and stealing. The word doesn't appear here. I don't know who advising Granger and Ramchatan. The word doesn't appear here. Instead, they want a cultural audit. They don't want a cultural audit in CN and GINA. What you need is prosecutors to go in there and lock them up. That's what you need. You need Silal Prasad to go there with a team of men and lock up all the people stealing, not the auditors. So that
give me your assessment overall of that letter.
Well, I'm very disappointed that Granger and Ramchatan would write nonsense like that.
What would you do, Mr. Gaskin?
Well, I was thinking, if you were to approach the problems in this country, we're talking about budget, of course. All this is pre-budget maneuverings going on here. When you talk about the national budget, the first thing we talk about, I would say, number one on my list would be accountability for the revenues of this country. And we start with NISL problem right there. That is the number one. And the NISL problem and the slush funds that are held all over the place.
You pull them all together.
All together, that is the number one
because
issue.
The Constitution says we have only one fund, the
only one
consolidated
fund,
fund,
one
of which
fund.
the contingencies fund is a part.
You have only
nothing
one
else.
fund. So when you go to the president, if you want to tell him that, look, sir, if you don't do these things, we can got a cut. If that's what you want to tell him, the first thing has to be NISL and the slush funds. If you're talking about budget.
What about these provisions of the Constitution, Mr. Gaskin? Article 77, 78. You know,
we'll come
say,
to that on the regional, and
yes,
I'll come
okay,
to that
good.
later. So I would start there if I had to write the president a letter. I'm very good at letter writing sometimes. And then we talk accountability for revenues and accountability
for expenditure.
And for expenditure, we're talking about the audit office and the auditing and the accounting of this country, or the expenditure. You know, as an accountant, you deal with revenues, you also deal with expenditure items. We have to have accountability there, and that's where the procurement commission comes to become number one item in my book. Number one, to get that clear. To get that clear and to strengthen the audit, the Office of the Auditor General to audit everything in this place.
Would you have approved the capital budget without the...
I approve nothing here. I approve nothing. If I had to vote on it, I approve nothing. Zero, nothing.
You would do what Mr. Chang said.
I reject the whole thing.
Okay, good.
Because if you can't bring to show me the financial statements of Gaisuko and GPL, how do you want me to approve anything? I want to prove nothing. I'm a person like that. We get nothing from you. They don't get a penny. They get nothing. They're lucky they don't have people more like me to deal with in the place. Then we come on the issue of corruption. Corruption is in any discussion with the president, you have to raise it. Corruption, NCN, all over the place. The whole place corrupt. I think everybody knows that.
But even the president, they've always said, Mr. Gaskin, bring us the proof.
Bring us the proof. But you want to bring us the proof. Bring us the proof. Bring us the proof. That's why with the gold gone to thing, the gold gone to Curacao and the cocaine gone somewhere, the 874 kilos nearly went. Then we come to the question of transparency. The politicians talk a lot about transparency. Where is it in the letter to President Ramatar? The word doesn't appear. It doesn't appear. The whole question of the Milo Road. The Milo Road was conceived in corruption with Motilal from the very beginning, with NISL giving out road contracts and all that, and continues to be clouded and shrouded in secrecy and corruption with Site Global and the Chinese and all those people. There you have the CGIA, the Chedijagan International Airport expansion. The Chinese said they were passing by and stopped in to present us with a big project for the new airport.
But yet we went to Jamaica.
They
didn't stop here. They stopped in Jamaica.
They're passing by. They were in the Caribbean, I guess. And the hydro, we know that's a big disaster. And the whole question of the Marriott Casino. The government doesn't have money to fix. They come to the National Assembly for money for Gaisuko and GPL, but they don't come to the National Assembly for money for the Marriott Casino. They seem to have money for that, but they don't seem to have money to fix Gaisuko. Isn't that amazing? That they have money for the Marriott Casino somewhere, but they don't have money for Gaisuko and GPL. And they have to come to the National Assembly for those monies, but for the Marriott Casino, they don't have to go any place, they can just bill it. And then this hospital, they don't have money. They have money for the casino, but they don't. But this Indian hospital is a big problem because we haven't seen the documentation on who's billing what at what cost and who will benefit from it. It's wrong to put $1 billion in this, I call it, what they call it a specialty hospital. When you don't have basic facilities in this country at the public hospital, at Suddy, Diamond,
once you go out of
Georgetown don't have it. You go to Georgetown Hospital now for certain tests. They'll send you to Eureka to get some tests done.
That's a private lab.
A private lab there. They don't have it. They don't have some basic things they don't do over there. CT scans, MRIs. I think now the big private hospital has the MRI. They don't have it there. But they have $58 million US to build a casino. Something wrong with the brains. You know, I don't know if Dr. Beckles could look at it. Dr. Beckles, he examines people's brains to see if they're mad. Because because they talk about Marriott Hotel, there's a casino they're building there. The word isn't used a lot, but I'm using it. It's the Marriott Casino there in Kingston. And then you talk about tax reform. They want a committee, I think the same Clifford Reese committee to be expanded and to include people that all of them would agree on. I don't know what they agree on that. I'd like to see which person all three of them will agree on. But we need the VAT. Ramjitan talks about reducing VAT all the time by 2%. It's in the party manifesto. APNO talks about it. It's not in the letter to the president. The word doesn't appear. They forget it about the VAT, the 2% they talk about. They didn't write.
Well, lots of things in their manifestos are not there.
Yeah, but
because they were concentrating on the budget.
Yeah, but VAT is a budget matter. Now, Region 10 radio station, the VAT, they didn't talk about it here at all. In the letter to the president, the request to reduce the VAT. They talk about 10% for sugar workers. What about this VAT problem? So they didn't talk about it in the letter to the president. They forgot all about it. So they themselves, they don't have any clue about tax reform. Then labor issues. They don't comprehensively deal with what I call labor issues in the pre-budget.
Other than the wage increase, is there anything about labor in that letter?
No. No, the 10% for
that's what
no, the word unemployment, job creation, joblessness, national minimum wage. Those words do not appear in this letter to President Ramatara. They don't appear at all. I don't know who wrote this.
That's quite astonishing.
Not astonishing to me. It's astonishing that Beckles hasn't looked at their brains up to now. That's what's astonishing. That in this whole document here, we have 11 items they're writing the president about, these two big men. And they talk nothing about jobs, nothing but the unemployment, nothing but job creation. And they talk about who must get what percentage for what. A national minimum wage, which has been talked about for a long time. See Gopal at the May Day celebrations, he said they're working on it.
Well, your Pope has just announced that he would like to see a minimum wage in every place.
Well, I'm supporting the Pope. I'm supporting the Pope. I'm a big supporter of that new Pope. So this thing here, when they sit down to write it, they left out the thing. So, and then you have serious, what I call rule of law issues. This is pre-budgeting. The whole question of the local government commission and local government elections and the ombudsman, these are rule of law issues that have to be dealt with. And then these inquiries into the operations of Gaisuko and NIS. You need to have that. And then, of course, the final question of regional economic development. They don't talk about it.
And the Constitution?
The Constitution is clear that these regions must be provided by the central government with the funds necessary
and with mechanisms also to raise their own revenues.
And it doesn't come up at all in this letter to President Ramatara. And then what I call, of course, and Clive Thomas wrote about, the criminalized sector of the economy.
What about the CGIA? That's an entity that has never once, and Mr. Duke, who is chairman of that body, he has never once submitted a financial statement over a period of 10 years.
Well, I understand that the Damar Harbor Bridge is now submitting its reports from 03 to 09 now. I don't know how come you're 10 years late, but we complain a lot about... But
this is only giving how much millions and millions?
Yeah. We complain a lot about what the PNC used to do, and rightfully so.
Mr. Gaskin, we've got about 5 minutes left.
I know. So, in terms of the budget and what came out of it, we don't know what the court...
Yeah, what has come out of it? That's the point I want to raise. Did you see it as did the opposition get anything, or was it a complete fiasco?
Well, they didn't get anything from the president on these 11 issues.
He said he would talk to them in July.
He talked to them in July, the tripartite.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. There's no provision in this constitution for tripartite people to deal with budget and financial issues. I don't see that. And the three parties getting together behind closed doors. I don't know what mechanism is there in the Constitution for them to discuss financial issues and budgetary issues and national inside behind closed doors. I'm not aware of that. That any of these things could go to tripartite. I'm not aware of that. And I'm not aware of that. I see they talk about it all the time. The National Assembly is the place for the three parties to discuss the nation's business.
What do you think the nation got out of what the opposition did in the National Assembly on this budget?
They got nothing. They got nothing. The thing is dominated by cuts. Some billions have been cut for CGIA and rightfully so for GPL and so on, pending the submission of information and the Indian hospital and so on. I think it's a good idea to cut all of that. But the most important thing I think is to bring the revenues of the Republic into the consolidated fund. That's what you need to do here. Not just the cutting, not focus on cutting on NCN. NCN should have been cut long ago. And GINA.
Now, Mr. Gaskin, you know, some people like things to move faster than others. Did you see any incremental benefit of what the opposition, Granger and Ramjatan, got out of the budget debate?
I didn't see it. 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 As a consumer, I didn't see it. Because the things they've been talking about all the time about reduction of VAT and so on and job, right, which they
so we still have Mr. Hari Prasad Nocta working out of Freedom House. We have Clinton Collymore, all these people.
4 ministers, we have all of that.
And the AFC voted for this.
Yes, and all the contract workers and all the lawlessness that goes on in the place all the time. You still have people at the top managers at GPL getting over $2 million a month to mismanage the place, because if
I think that's an understatement. I think there's
more than two, right?
I think it's double that in one particular case.
If GPL were a company, a public company, traded and they said
it wouldn't have been trading.
It wouldn't be trading.
No, it would not.
And the shareholders would have gotten rid of the board and the management of those places. And we have to look at the board and management of Geico, GPL, and NIS for starters. NCN and GINA, for starters.
Given what has happened, what do you see for the rest of the year? Because I said we'll go back to
this document here. And next thing we have to address here, we got 2 minutes. This whole question of the foreign capital here, the Chinese capital, what they're doing with hiring practices. We have to see what incentives are available to local investors. Like the foreigners, they get everything. They get all the tax break. They're allowed to bring in all the people from outside. The local businessmen who are struggling, many of them, don't get the same kind of breaks.
Well, you know, you mentioned that. I happen to have seen the contract for the Chedi Jagan International Airport.
So
you know what it says?
No, I don't.
That they could bring 6 Chinese for every 4 Guyanese at the lower end, and as many as 0 Guyanese at the higher end.
I'm not surprised.
And we have signed such an agreement, Mr. Gat.
Well, we have to.
And the TUC said it had cut a deal with the Prime Minister on this issue.
Is that right? Well, that is the Jagdo thing signed in Jamaica. Well, Jagdo and Brassington, they sign all kind of nonsense. They sign all kind of nonsense. We have to reverse it, and we have to fight against all these things. The local businessmen are not getting the breaks that these people are getting all the time.
So you would make a case for the people who you've been criticizing on this program?
No, I'm not representing Ramesh Duku here. No. There are a lot of companies here that do a lot of work Ramesh Duku and them, they get it home. They know how to arrange things for themselves because they're very close to the government. But the thing has to be a level field. What's available to businessmen should be available to the local businessmen who are investing and creating jobs, and to the Chinese if and when they come, and Rusal and all those people.
Okay, the budget has now been passed. 30 seconds, where do we go? What should the opposition now do?
Well, the opposition will have to wait and see 2 things, how things play out in court there with the matter before Mr. Justice Chang, and secondly, they'll have to see how the Minister of Finance reacts to those things, if he wants to dip into the contingencies fund again and replace the funds if he loses that case. We'll have to see how that plays out. But I'm not optimistic at all about nothing.
Mr. Raymond Gaskin, thank you very much for appearing on Plain Talk. A very spirited discussion. I apologize for the technical difficulties we had during the course of the program. Operators and viewers, thank you. Good night. See you next week.